Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Here, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for opening remarks by Councilmember Brinker Harding.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. I don't really have prepared comments, but what it's the last council meeting for 3 of our companions, and I think each one of us kind of wanted to say a few words. So I thought maybe rather than have some prepared comments, that I'd act more like an MC, if you will indulge me in that, Mr. President.
Without objection.
All right, thanks. So I guess I'll kick it off by saying we just had a little cake and reception and had a chance to talk a little bit amongst ourselves about really the relationship that we as a council have, and really the special relationship we as a council have, because we are certainly 7 unique individuals with different backgrounds, different ideals, different compasses, but we all have one thing in common, and that's trying to improve the city of Omaha, or provide an environment that is to benefit all the citizens of Omaha. And you mix the 7 of us together with those different kind of thoughts and philosophies and thoughts. And we talked about, I think we've done a pretty good job on this council of whether or not we agreed or disagreed. We left those personal opinions outside the door. And then when we came in here, even though we had those differences, we found ways to make adjustments, to make compromises, because again, we all wanted to make sure that whatever we did not only benefited each one of our own districts, but the city as a whole. And Colleen Brennan, who is our newest member, and will be no longer on the council after today's meeting, but came in a very challenging situation, in my opinion. She came in to replace a sitting council member who was in a 2nd term, and in very short order, dove headfirst into the issues, made sure that she was asking questions, because she wanted to be a good representative of not only her district, but again, the city of Omaha. And it's been my pleasure, even though albeit brief, to get to know Colleen and work with Colleen and understand what this city means to her. And I know we'll be hearing from Colleen for many years to come, because I know she wants to stay active. And then to my right, Mr. Jerram, who you and I definitely don't always see things the same way, but we also we agree on so many things as well. And it's really been my pleasure to get to know you on a personal level, as well as a professional level, if you will, at council. And the leadership that you display in running the meetings, and your fairness, I think speak a lot to how we as a council operate. And I want to thank you for that. And I'm trying to keep this brief, because I know others have things to say. And then my friend, Mr. Gray, who we've known each other for many years in different capacities, when I worked for the mayor before and when he was at Channel 7. And Omaha's a unique community in that it's very, we're metropolitan, but we're also still a small town, or a small town feeling. And So it's been my pleasure to be able to work with Ben in different capacities. And when he was serving as president, it was the way he ran the meetings. And I think and that carried over to the way I think Chris has run the meetings. We talked a little bit about this too. Two different styles, but again, kept the professionalism, the decorum, the respect for the body, as well as the respect for those testifying at hand, and making sure that was always first and foremost. And these three individuals, again, who will be serving their last meeting today and serving the city in this capacity, and I know they'll serve in other capacities, but it truly has been my pleasure, my opportunity to get to know you, to get to work with you, and to share time with you, because at the end of the day, again, we're all working for the same thing. And it's just, I think the three of you have such commitment, such belief in the city of Omaha, and for the opportunity to serve with you, I will always be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harding. Councilmember Festerson, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. And I too just wanted to take a brief moment of personal privilege to recognize my three colleagues. I appreciate all you've done on your time on the City Council. You don't do this job unless you truly are dedicated to your districts and to the city as a whole. And your time and service is very much appreciated, I know, not only by your constituents, but by all your colleagues and everyone in the city. I did want to direct just a few comments to my two colleagues, Councilman Jerram and Councilman Gray, who I was first elected with in 2009. So we all came in together, and that's been 12 years. So 3 terms in 12 years. A lot happens during that time frame, and I'm not going to sit here and try and tick off everything or even an entire list of accomplishments, because that would be too long and we'd be here for a long time. But I did want to mention a few things that I think you should be very proud of as council members that wouldn't have happened without your leadership. And a few of those things that come to my mind that I know we worked together on were, when we first came into office, the pension crisis our city faced, police and fire pensions and civilian pensions. And without untold hours of dedication and work towards that, our city would not be in a financial position that it is in now, and would not have a way out of that situation like we do now, that we came to agreement on and worked very hard with. We all worked very hard on establishing LGBTQ rights, anti-discrimination ordinances. It took us twice to get it done, but we got it done. And we added anti-discrimination in housing to that just recently as well. That certainly makes the list. Workforce training, Heartland Workforce Solutions, in our efforts to address poverty and unemployment in the city. That would not have happened but for your leadership as well. And that continues today, every year in our budget. Certainly the Small and Emerging Business Ordinance and the REACH programs. Our efforts to reach out to minority businesses to have more work available to them through the city and through city contracting has been successful and very worthwhile, and something we need to continue. I would add to that the diversity and inclusion plans we just required of all city contractors. That was co-sponsored by the both of you just in the last few weeks. And then definitely the rental registration ordinance. That was a crisis in our community that we all stepped up to work on and put in place, and is working. So your dedication to safe housing must be noted too, I think, on that list. We worked very hard to establish the land bank. That is a new entity that was created during our time frame here that has great potential to do good things in our community for safe housing and abandoned properties. And we can't not mention things like Step Up and our violence prevention programs that also would not have occurred without your leadership. And most recently, our mask ordinance, which I think appropriately expires today, but I think we stepped up and did the right thing and showed leadership on the city council to keep our citizens safe during the pandemic. Some difficult days that come to my mind, the most difficult days, I would say, that come to my mind over that time frame, were the shooting and death of Peyton Benson. Councilman Gray has a personal connection to that. I'll never forget that incident my entire life. I'll never forget the shooting and death of Officer Roscoe that happened during our time frame in office together as well. And certainly the difficult times of this last year with civil unrest and all the associated issues that we must remain committed to addressing. Going forward, I think are part of that list over the last 12 years as well that, that I know you've cared deeply about and are committed to. So I think I'll stop there, although I could continue, only to say that after 12 years of working with colleagues like that, you come to trust them, you come to know them, you come to appreciate your work with them, and not only are they colleagues, but they become really good friends. And so I look forward to continuing our friendship together, even though today's your last day at the City Council.
Thank you, Councilmember Festerson. Councilmember Melton, you're recognized.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Mr. President. Last day that I get to refer to you as Mr. President. I'd like to start with you. I've been on the council with you for 8 years, and I have to say I appreciate having another barrister on the council. I think we talked before. I always know when I run some of these issues by you, we get to deal with our last one today, but when you and I agree on something, then it also gives me pause and says, all right, I think I'm good on this one. And so I've always turned to you and looked at you through a lot of some of our tough decisions that we've had to make, and I appreciate all the time that you've taken, always to talk and have open conversations on things that we disagree with. But I appreciate the time that you've put in, that you've given to our city, and I appreciate the work that you've done as the president of our council. Thank you. And I just want to thank you for that service. And Colleen, so you weren't here on Rich Paul's last day. I'm not sure if you were or not, but he said that he picked you to take his seat because one of the reasons is he thought Aimee Melton needed a friend. Now, I do consider all of you here on the council my friend, but I also want to say you and I hadn't met yet, but he was right. We did become friends, and I really appreciate everything you've done. And to step into a role as an appointed person is very difficult. And to step in where, somebody like Rich had been on the council for 7 years, but you did it, and you did it well. You did it with pride, and it's really been a pleasure getting to know you. You have good taste in clothes as well, so if I can ever, I really have appreciated the time that I've gotten to know you, and so I look forward to working with you. And Ben Gray, and I know I hope I don't lose it on this one, but over the last 8 years, although I watched you for many years on TV, I didn't get to know you until I got elected on council. You've really helped me through making a lot of decisions. You've spent hours discussing issues with me. I've worked with you, especially on the expansion of the Santa Francis house that we started on 8 years ago, on really helping the homeless, making sure that homes are getting demolished. We really took that demolition list and brought it down. But on all the things that Councilman Festerson mentioned that I don't necessarily want to repeat, you've done so much, not just for your district, but for the entire city. But you've also done a lot for me. And I consider you a mentor and a friend. And I would say I'm going to really miss you, but I'm not going to let you just walk away because I still have your cell phone and I have Freddie's too. So if you don't answer my call, then I'm going to go ahead and call Freddie just so that I can get to you. But you've done so much, and I just appreciate you, and I appreciate everything you've done for the city. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Melton. Vice President Palermo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's always fun going last because there's not much to say, but thank you to the 3 colleagues that I serve with here. It's been a fun 4 years, at least, with Mr. President Jerram and Councilmember Gray. But Colleen, I'll start with you. I'll say that you gave it your all till the very end. Even in the law department today, you weighed in, and that's what you do. And although some may say I picked you because you sent me an email, That's the furthest thing from the truth. I talked to a lot of people who wanted the District 5 seat, who happened to be my old former best colleague, Councilmember Pauls, who has left us. And out of all the people I talked to, and I'm sorry I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at the screen because you're directly behind me and you wouldn't be able to hear me otherwise, but I tell people, if you don't wake up wanting to do this job, then you're not going to succeed at this job. There's no OJT here. It is show up, do the job, and you have no idea what it's going to be unless you put your heart, mind, and effort into it. So it was calls, it was discussions, it was emails, it was texts, it was questions. And I knew you wanted to do this job, but unfortunately, we hold elections in this democracy we live in for a reason. And you're not going to go away, but I do want to thank you for giving your best from day one until the last day. So thank you for that. Councilmember Gray, I see you on the screen there. You were the first president I had here on the council, although I watched you and Council President Jerram for many, many years on the TV, as you would say. And I learned a lot from you. I learned a lot from you from watching you work, watching you build. It's easy to armchair quarterback this position without being in this position. And you really don't know what we've accomplished until you've been behind the scenes and seen how things are played out and things are taken care of. You and I have some of the same issues we deal with in our districts that are ongoing. I know you made big strides to close that gap, and I appreciate it because like in the Navy, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And if we're not taking care of every single district in the city like you have courageously for your district, then we're not doing the city of Omaha good. So thank you for letting me watch you and learn from you on how we take care of some of the same issues that as you won't be here, you will still be taken care of, and I appreciate that. So thank you, Councilmember Gray. Mr. President, and I don't want you to think this is like a man crush, but it's true. As you watch these meetings, before I even thought about running for council, I would sit back and say, man, this guy is really smart. Like, where did he come up with that? Or how did he know that person's name? Or how did he know that certain zoning? And that's just you. I mean, you're a smart guy. You're very good at what you do, and over the last 2 years, you have held that president's seat with high regard, with what we expect here in the council, with what we expect here in the chambers. So I watched, and it's impossible to learn everything you know, even if I was here as long as you. And I know I'm not the only person in awe of the experience and the grace you take with that seat as president. But I appreciate it. I appreciate sharing lunches on Tuesdays. Obviously, different council districts, different restaurants. We had many different good discussions, and they were always about how to make the city of Omaha better. For some reason, District 3 streets were always much better than every other district as we drove around. That I will work on. But I just want to say thank you for, and Councilmember Gray as well, for taking somebody like myself and Brinker elected at the same time and letting us learn from you on how this job is. And I'll never forget, early on there was things that I would want to do, and you would say, no. You're on the city council now. We don't do that. And it's true. It's true. This is an amazing elected position to have, and it's been, sometimes you think about politics and you're like, boy, people shouldn't be there forever. We need new people in the seat. But truth be told, when you lose the experience that we are losing here today, we'll have ground to make up. So thank you for everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Vice President Palermo. Councilmember Brennan, do you wish to be recognized?
I just appreciate everybody here so much. There really isn't much to say more than what everybody else has said, but this is an amazing opportunity. I appreciate the fact that I was able to do this. And I'm going to miss all of you because you've become not only my colleagues, but my friends. And I will be around, just not in this capacity. So thank you.
Thank you. My friend Ben Gray, do you wish to be recognized?
Yeah, I'm gonna miss the pay. You know, I can't leave here being, you know, I've had a great run here, and it has been significantly challenging, but it has also been extremely rewarding. And the staff of the city council and the clerk's staff, I wouldn't put anybody over them. We've got a great staff, we've got a great city, and this council, we did some magnificent work in every part of this city. And I walk away from here with no regrets, and I'm very proud of the work we did together, Chris and Pete and others. We did some really challenging things, and it took a lot of work. And but at the end of the day, we accomplished some really great things, and I'm just thankful that I had the time. I'm thankful that I had the time to spend with you guys and ladies, because it was what we really need to do is develop a 501c3 and teach the people at the state and the federal government how things ought to work. And so with that, I just say thank you to all of you, and thank you to everyone in the audience for being here today, and thank you for being involved citizens. Democracy is not a spectator sport. We need to be actively involved all the time, but we also need to be thoughtful and respectful of one another. And I hope that will continue. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I would just add a few remarks. You know, Omaha's been very good to me. I came here, a kid born about a half hour south of the George Washington Bridge, and came to Omaha in 1988 for law school, and I met my wife here. And I really feel like the love that she and her family who are here today have shown me, that the city has shown me too. And I really do feel like an adopted son to this city. And when I got elected, it was through hard work, but I felt fortunate and blessed to be elected and serve. And I've always felt that this is the type of service where you're closest to the people, that you shouldn't overstay your welcome, that turnover is a good thing, fresh ideas are a good thing, and that if more people who were in elected positions gave that example, we'd have a more vibrant democracy. My goal was to, at the end of the days, whether it was 4 months, 4 years, or longer, and believe me, in the first term, you didn't know if you're going to be recalled or not, because the city was in financial disaster, and we had to do some things to shore up the city to keep it out of bankruptcy. But I hoped that I would reach the point where I could say, you know, you made a difference and improved the city. And a lot of the time that we spent on this was out of a conviction that the city isn't operating at its best unless all citizens in the city are given the equal opportunity to succeed and to thrive, to live their lives, regardless of who they loved, the color of the skin, or where they lived. I'll let history judge me for whether we made a difference. I'd like to think that we did. Madam Clerk. Oh, Councilmember Harding.
I just want to say for the record, that concludes my opening comments.
Good. All right.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chamber.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Omaha City Council. We thank you for joining us. As a courtesy to those in attendance and to facilitate the conduct of our business, we ask that you please turn off or silence all electronic devices.
Items 6 through 9 can be considered together for Pacific Renaissance located northwest of 192nd and Pacific Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 6, an ordinance to rezone this property from AG District to R6 District. Item 7, an ordinance to approve a major amendment to a PUD overlay district in an R6 district. Item 8, a resolution to approve the final plat. Item 9, a resolution to approve the subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on items 6 through 9 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
I'm Kyle Hazy with E&A Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road, Omaha, Nebraska, representing the applicant. The property in question today is located on the west side of 192nd and Leavenworth Street, as shown here in the outline hatch. It is 6.8 acres, currently zoned AG, looking to rezone to R6 with a PUD. This will be an expansion of the already existing Ravello 192 here on the corner that's been very successful. Be extension of that project. It'll be 7 buildings totaling 68 apartment residences, with a mix of studio, 1-bedroom, and a few 3-bedrooms as well. This is an example of the architecture and elevations for the proposed buildings. And with that, I'll make myself available for any questions that council might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 6 through 9 are approved,
Thank you.
7-0. Item 10, to consider a Class C liquor license application for Pasta Amore located at 11027 Prairie Brook Road, A's Communication and Support.
The public hearing on item 10 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yeah, my name is Jared Clark, and I live at 10304 Prairie Road, Omaha, Nebraska.
Happy to answer any questions, right?
We're just applying to switch our. We did just purchase Pasta Amore from Leo Faschinello, a longtime owner for 35 years, and we're switching to a Class C, so we can sell some wine off sale for wine dinners.
Is he going to give you his source for the wine he brought in from Sicily?
Yes, we have it in the contract.
All right.
It was part of the deal.
Well, that was the place where we toasted Subby Anzaldo, a long-time city council member and mayor of the city. And it was a wonderful day, and I hope you carry on the tradition as Leo did.
We're hoping we can follow up his legacy. It's tough shoes to fill, but I think we can hold it up.
Okay. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 10 is approved, 7-0. Item 11, to consider a Class C liquor license application for a Cafe Postale located at 950 South 10th Street.
The public hearing on item 11 begins at this time. We have Mr. Newhouse for the applicant registered. Mr. Newhouse, you're recognized.
Yeah, hi, sorry. I'm here to answer any questions you may have about the application for the liquor license.
Are you at 950 South 10th Street?
That's correct.
We just needed that for the record. Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 11 is approved, 7-0. Item 12, to consider a Class CK liquor license application for Wine 121 located at 12100 West Center Road, Suite 905.
The public hearing on item 12 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes, William Bierman, 10250 Regency Circle, attorney for the applicant. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 12 is approved, 7-0. Item 13, to consider a Class C liquor license application for G's Pub located at 5051 South 108th Street.
The public hearing on item 13 begins at this time. We'll start with the applicant, Mr. Fields, by video conference. Mr. Fields, you're recognized.
Hi, I'm Travis Fields. I'm here to answer any questions for the liquor application for G's Pub.
Are you still at 5051 South 108th Street?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 13 is approved, 7-0. Item 14, to consider a Class C liquor license application for Marley Bone Pub located at 3710 Leavenworth Street. A's communication from the Planning Department regarding permits for the outdoor area.
The public hearing on item 14 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Mr. President, members, Mike Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue. If I could, Mr. President, I'd like to take just a real quick second for a little personal privilege also. I'd like to first of all thank Council Lady Brennan for her service. Thank you very much. Many years ago in the last century, I was appointed to the County Board of Commissioners, so I know how tough that job could be. So thank you very much. Councilman Gray, thank you for your over decade of service. I've enjoyed working with you so much. Hopefully, maybe there's a few things we can still work on in the future. And lastly, Mr. President, thank you so much for your over a decade of service. I don't think the public knows all the work you did behind the scenes, especially in the development area, of all the things you did to transform and help your district and the city at large. And I want to thank you very much for that service. I think Omaha is a better place for your service. So thank you very much. And the real reason I'm here is item 14. We would be here for any questions you might have. This is the Marley Bone. He's going to rehab the entire place. He's also adding a patio to the east. We're here for any questions you might have. The owner's, I think, available by Zoom if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0. Item 15, to consider a Class C liquor license application for TO5 located at 7515 Pacific Street, Suite A.
The public hearing on item 15 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Mr. President, members, Mike Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue. Again, this is you might know the Shahi restaurant, which features Indian cuisine and 10th and Farnham. This is the second location, 75th and Pacific. We're here for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Second, roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 15 is approved, 7-0. Item 16, to consider a Class I liquor license application for Top Q Nails and Spa located at 1529 South 203rd Street, Suite 104.
The public hearing on item 16 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? We have two on Yo. You're recognized. Can we have your name and address, please? You're muted. Hold on just a second.
Sorry.
There you go.
My name is Tu Anvo.
And your address?
4501 North 206th Street, Elkhorn, Nebraska 68022.
Welcome to the City Council meeting. Is there anything you wish to say, or are you just happy to answer any questions?
I'm just happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 16 is approved, 7-0. Item 17, to consider a Class I liquor license application for Hall 31 located at 3602 South 31st Street.
The public hearing on item 17 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Hi, my name's Marissa Flagg,
Michael Flagg.
and we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Do you want to make a little spiel for your new business, or?
We're just opening up, and we're going to be doing wedding parties, bridal showers, baby showers, family get-togethers, things like that. But that's what we're asking of our liquor license for.
Great. Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 17 is approved, 7-0.
Good luck.
Item 18, to consider a Class K liquor license application for Javi's Taco located at 2559 South 171st Court, Bay 2559.
Public hearing on item 18 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Mr. President, members of the council, again, Mike Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue. This is just a catering request on an existing license, catering endorsement. Here for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 18 is approved, 7-0. Item 19, to consider a liquor license addition application for Billy Frogs located at 1120 Howard Street to add a second floor area approximately 13 feet by 65 feet, known as 1114 Howard Street. East Communications in opposition.
I'm going to abstain on this one, so the Vice President will call the agenda.
Okay, we're going to open the public hearing on item 19 for Shady Inc. DBA Billy Frogs. Proponents, please.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, members, Mike Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue. This, I know there's some opposition letters here. There may be people here opposed too as well, I don't know. I think there's some confusion, however, is what we're doing here. This is not an expansion of the Billy Frogs bar. This is above it, and it's a private area for parties, for weddings, all kinds of private events. That's what we're doing. The plan here is the latest they would go is 10:45 in the evening. So that's the plan here. The management and ownership is here if we have questions. I think I want to clear that up. Also, there was some objections to package licensing. Well, we're already a C, so we're entitled to do packaging, but that's not part. This is a bar restaurant. This is not part of our stuff. That's not part of our program, so we don't do that. So I think there's some confusion as to the opposition. But with that, I would just allow Mr. Vice President, I'd like to have some rebuttal time. And again, management is here if you need questions. So we're here to answer any objections that show up. Okay. I think the main thing, I think there was a misunderstanding as to what we're doing here. It's not an expansion of the bar per se. It's just licensed to become a private party room upstairs. And it has been used in the past for non-alcohol events and even some weddings with SDLs. So it's already had a history of being used.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, if you just stay close, please, and we'll find out if there's any more proponents. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Come on down, and what you'll do is state your name and address. And sir, if you want to come down this way too to save some time, get a little closer to the front.
My name is Marcia Congdon. I live at 420 South 11th Street. I own a condominium 214. I'm a resident there. I'm also representing the 420 Homeowners Association, and we're in opposition to this. My loft, and clarification, the application, the letter that we received said for a space 132 feet by 65 feet. The notice in the agenda says 13 feet by 65. I'd like to clarify, is that a typo, or is it really, how big is the space?
Okay, we don't entertain questions, but I'm sure during the rebuttal we can get that question answered for you.
Okay. The space, if it is above 1114 South Howard Street, that abuts my condominium directly. So any noise And I wish that the walls in the old market weren't permeable as they are. It is a brick wall, but when that space has been used to house traveling musicians from time to time, I can hear them. I am very concerned because, like everybody in the 420 building, we rebuilt after the IMS pub fire and spent a whole lot of money for which we weren't compensated very well to rebuild the building and bring it into its present state. Having a space next to us that would create noise and disruption would be a real issue for those of us who live there. At this point, we thought that it was going to be a bar and a restaurant. It has been clarified, I guess, that it's a banquet space, and that's very uncertain. There are a number of people in the old market, and I'm one of them, because I see the Billy Frogs as the folks, it doesn't attract a clientele that we are looking for in the old market, just putting it bluntly. And so I'm concerned about what's going to go in on the second floor next to my condominium and down on the street. And I'll entertain any questions or any concerns. And I also wish to thank the council for all the work they've done over the years and making Omaha a really nice place. And we're all working on trying to do that, all of us who live there, so, and keep it as nice as it is. Anybody have any questions for me?
We may. Thank you.
Okay.
Next opponent, please.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Diane Watson. I too reside at 420 South 11th Street, number 303. My windows face Howard Street. I moved to the old market approximately a year and a half ago. I too am in opposition for a very specific reason. I think it's a dangerous precedent to start allowing commerce, especially loud commerce, to encroach onto second floors of the old market residences. There is one facility that does have second floor bar, and that's the Upstream, which is a standalone building. It's very loud living above Billy Frog's now. I recognized when I moved downtown that I was living in an urban space, and I'm absolutely fine with that. But I think we're on dangerous footing here if we suddenly allow all of our businesses to start building upwards where we do have residences right next door on the second floor. I'm on the third floor, and it's a very loud place to be. I'm just living 2 floors above Billy Frog's at this time. So thank you for your consideration, and thank you for allowing us to attend.
Thank you. Next opponent. Did your proponent? Okay. Any more opponents on agenda item 19? Okay, seeing none, the public hearing's closed. Mr. Kelly, hold on. We have a comment by Councilmember Brennan.
I just have a question for Mr. Kelly. Is there anything that we can do to be a little more considerate to our neighbors about the noise?
Yeah,
That was the number one concern that came across my desk.
The person who's managing the space is right here. Why don't we have him ask that?
Okay.
We would certainly work with neighbors. We understand there's issues. Again, this is not an expansion of the bar, which I think was part of the issue. There was a misunderstanding of what's proposed. And they can do private parties there now. They don't have a license. So, anyway, Mike, why don't you come on up and give your name and for the record and be available for questions here.
Name and address both, please.
Thank you. Kevin Deese, 14905 South 24th Ave, Bellevue, 68123. Yeah, my family and I moved here to help start a new coffee shop on the main floor called The Table, free advertisement. And after The Table was a success and off the ground, we had the opportunity to start a wedding and event center, really with the initial purpose of really a worship place, a place of ministry and things like that. My background is pastoral ministry, also a former Air Force officer. But we came here to build a ministry and a coffee shop. We had an opportunity to do this, but to help pay for said ministries, because they do not pay a whole lot, we also saw the opportunity to have weddings and events. And so that's why we needed the liquor license. We're asking for this expansion so we can hold those events. Churches and weddings go hand in hand, and so lots of influence and in the city. Having worked at several major churches here in the city, we'd appreciate the expansion for this license. And our events will be over by 10:45. All guests will be out of the building by 11:15, 11:30. I'll have 5 kids I got to go home and put to bed. Thank you.
Would you pledge to the council, again, Mike Kelly for the record, would you pledge to the council that you would work with neighbors or on noise complaints if we have them?
Absolutely. In fact, for another business in the building already, we've added a sound barrier. Spent quite a bit of money for an internal person just to have a little extra sound barrier for the internal. And I've also talked to some residents on the 3rd floor directly above us, and they can't even hear us right now. We had a worship event a couple weeks ago. They said they couldn't hear us. So we felt like it was a non-issue.
But you're willing to work?
Oh, absolutely. We'll work with anybody in the community. I love this city. Not born here, but raised here. Most of my life been here. We'll work with anybody to help satisfy their needs.
Thank you.
Yep.
No, that's all I have.
Is your light on? No. Oh, okay. Is there any more lights? Mr. Kelly, I have a question for you. Could you verify the dimensions of the space? I believe it was a typo.
It's a large space. It's about 8,000 square feet total.
But it's
It's the whole upstairs.
132 by 65.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no more lights, it's will of the council. Oh, sure. Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. If I could have one of the neighbors that live on the 2nd floor, the one especially that lives on the 2nd floor, if you could come out. I'm sorry, I didn't write your name down.
Yes.
The owner has expressed a willingness to work with you all to try and get the noise down on the level that you all live on. So I guess I'm wondering if we approve this today, would you be comfortable working with them to try and address the noise issues that you talked about?
I am a little confused as to who is actually putting the space in. Billy Froggs is applying for the license. The gentleman who just spoke.
And then, ma'am, you're towards us, the comments, please.
So I'm a little confused. Whose license is it and what exactly will it be? I just need a clarification.
Let me make sure Mr. Kelly knows. They can answer that for you real quick.
Again, Mike Kelly for the record. This is Billy Frog's license, extension of that. But this person will be managing the upstairs area. So as to the upstairs area, he's the person to talk to. He's not the owner, doesn't own the license.
Okay.
Billy Froggs owns the license.
Okay. But can you address the question that I had? Not you, Mike, I'm sorry. Just a question, ma'am, about the owners, the manager has expressed a willingness to work to address the sound problems. Would you be willing to work with him on that to get those?
I am not unwilling to work with anybody. As my neighbor said, having something on the moving bar capability up to the 2nd floor is a very once this is approved, although this gentleman and his intention is wonderful at the moment, once this is approved, there's nothing that will say that the space will be continued to be used for that wedding and religious events. And we have no recourse at that point. This is basically our only opportunity. And just,
no, I just wanted to go ahead. I wanted you to finish.
In the past, with the noise at Billy Froggs and the disturbances on the street, I've gone into the bar, I've given them my business card, I've asked for somebody to please talk to me, we'd be willing to work, can we work our issues out? And nothing has happened. I was born and raised in this city. I returned here because I loved it and bought something in the old market in 2008 because I used to come here when I was in college and it had always been my dream. I love the city. I love this place. And I want to continue to be able to do that and reside here. So, sound barriers, if they can be put up between them, I'm willing, we're all willing to work with that.
Okay.
But guarantees down the road.
Well, actually, what I was going to respond to was they did stipulate to certain things today for the record. So there is something that you can do because they have stipulated for the record that they will work on sound barriers, that they will work with the neighbors to reduce the sound and those sorts of things. So it was stipulated to on the record. So you do have a little bit of ammunition just in case, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion approved.
Oh, hold on.
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Harding, you're recognized.
I got it answered. Thanks.
Got it, okay. All right.
Motion approved.
Roll call?
Palermo.
Yes.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding.
Yes.
Melton. And Mr. President abstains. Motion passed 6-0. Item 20, a resolution to approve a Keno satellite agreement for Stu's Place located at 9101 Bedford Avenue.
Public hearing on item 20 begins at this time. We have Melody Seismic registered by video conferencing.
Yes, Melody Simzak with Big Red Keno, 11248 John Galt Boulevard, Omaha, Nebraska, 68137. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Seismic. I'm sorry, I've never did in the few meetings we had together got your name right, so
Appreciate your service.
thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? The public hearing is closed. Councilmember Festerson, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. I just wanted to address this briefly since it is a little bit unusual on our agenda to have something that requires a supermajority vote for a Keno license associated with the waivers we're seeking to grant here, but I do think this is an unusual case. I've worked with Big Red Keno on this and the owner of Stu's Place, which is near 90th and Maple, on this process together with the law department and the city clerk, so I appreciate their work. In essence, this was an establishment that had a fire and had a difficult time reopening, and their Keno license expired during the COVID timeframe, and now they're anxious to get back up and running. And without these waivers, there would have been probably a 10-week delay to something that's very key to their business and probably would have prevented them from reopening. And since we're in the business of trying to help businesses reopen right now, post-COVID, it felt like this was very appropriate, so I'd appreciate the support of my colleagues on this. Thank you.
We have a motion, roll call. Did the motion and second include the waivers?
Yes.
Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the City Council Rules of Order.
The public hearing on agenda items 21 through 25 were held on May 18, 2021. Roll call.
Palermo. Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items 26 through 46 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, if you are a proponent or opponent.
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Birch Street. Hello, council members. I am a proponent for the resolution 38. 36, 37, and 38. Thank you. And I also want to congratulate the council members who are exiting for their service to the city. I think you'll get excited about the new chances that you have coming your way. See ya.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents or opponents on the consent agenda resolutions?
I'm Deputy Chief Michelle Bang with the Omaha Police Department.
505 South 15th Street. I'm a proponent for items 43, 44, and 45, if you have any questions. I also wanted to take an opportunity as an executive staff member of the Omaha Police Department to thank the three council members, Councilman Jerram, Gray, and Councilwoman Brennan, for your service and for your mentorship and for your support over the many years of my career. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents or opponents to consent agenda resolutions?
My name is Michael Church, the manager of Godfathers at 8936 North 78th Avenue Circle.
Happy to answer any questions, right?
Yep.
Thank
Anything
you.
that can help.
Thanks for coming. Are there any other proponents or opponents to consent agenda resolutions? The public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Palermo. Yes. Brennan. Yes. Festerson. Yes. Gray. Yes. Harding. Yes. Melton. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 47, an ordinance to approve a dockless shared scooter operation agreement with Lime is amendment of the whole requested by the Law Department.
Councilmember Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to bring this up on 25 as well too, but I thought I'd just cover it with one as it relates to the scooters. I did have some concern because we had not yet had the opportunity to address or approve or amend the most recent park rules that are coming to us soon. Among one of those rules contemplated the ability for scooters to be on our public trails. But in the wisdom of those writing the contract, I did find that it's been pointed out to me that in paragraph F, which is notice of both agreements, it says a shared scooter may be ridden within city parks or on public trails, but only as allowed for by the city and in strict compliance with the approved rules and regulations of the City of Omaha Parks and Recreation Department. So it is covered within there. I was going to offer up an amendment to cover that, but again, since it's already covered in there and we'll have the opportunity to make our final determination on the park rules when it comes to this body, this language is sufficient to cover that at this point. So I will not be offering up the amendment I had suggested.
Thank you. Was that a motion? There's a motion to approve the amendment as a whole. Second, roll call.
Palermo. Yes. Brennan. Yes. Festerson. Yes. Gray. Yes. Harding. Yes. Melton. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 48, an ordinance to amend section 23-177 of the Omaha Municipal Code to add the employment classification entitled Street Maintenance Manager. Personnel Board recommends approval.
I've had a request to place this on file. Is there a motion? Roll call.
Palermo. Yes. Brennan. Yes. Festerson. Yes. Gray. Yes. Harding. Yes. Melton. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 49, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a purchase order to FCC Environmental Services for rubbish container service at various street maintenance facilities.
The public hearing on item 49 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 50, an ordinance to approve the Clove Apartments Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Agreement.
Public hearing on item 50 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68132. I am opposed to this, primarily because I don't think it's transparent enough. The words "the city's participation" are no longer on this. I'd like to understand the difference between TIF that has it and TIF that doesn't have it, because there is one later on that has that phrase. I'd like to call on this city council to correct that before they pass it. because the process goes so quickly that a citizen probably won't have another chance on it. But I'd also like to make a formal complaint.
Is it on this item on the agenda, Mr. Storr?
It's related to it, but goodbye.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 51, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2018 State Homeland Security Grant Award period to September 1, 2018 through August 31, 2022.
The public hearing on item 51 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 52, an ordinance transferring funds from unencumbered balances in the 2020 general fund budget. A's amendment of the whole requested by the Finance Department.
The public hearing on item 52 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Luis Jimenez. I'm a proponent, 1819 Farnham Street, Harney level room H08.
That's not your address, Luis.
It's
You're on
the-
Birch Street.
It's the county's clerk's
You need your
address.
address.
I think that I am allowed to use
No, you're
the
not.
county's address.
But we do have your address, so we'll list it.
Well, I'll defer to you on this for this time.
Well, that's the rule, so thank you for indulging the rules.
Okay. So there's the amendment of the whole only allocates $350,000. So as I understand it, then there's $3 million that has not been allocated. I encourage the mayor and the council to look into allocating those $3 million for community services programs that uplift the community. Thank you.
Are there any other proponents or opponents on this item? The public hearing is closed.
Item 53, Blue Cross Blue Shield Nebraska appeals the rejection of their bid from May 12, 2021 for RFP City of Omaha Medical Administrative Services Organization, third-party administrator, pharmacy benefit manager services.
At this time, we'd call the appellant Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Nebraska to present their appeal.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Powers.
Thank you. Jim Powers, Suite 1601, 3700, or excuse me, 1601 Dodge 3700, Suite 3700, Omaha, Nebraska, representing Blue Cross Blue Shield today on this appeal. With me today is Gretchen Tuhig, who is the Chief Compliance Officer and General Counsel for Blue Cross, and Mike Nelson, who is Executive Vice President of Sales and Account Management for Blue Cross. As you know, we're here on appeal of the denial of their bid to provide claim services to the City of Omaha. They are the current claim provider and have been the claim provider for over 8 years and have handled over $100 million, if not $200 million in claims. The bid was rejected by the bid opening committee on the grounds that the bid security was not adequate and it was a substantial non-compliance. Blue Cross was not given a chance to cure that, and that's why we're here today. They filed their appeal on May 19th, and the city has taken the position that it is a substantial non-compliance with the bid security provisions of the municipal code. We certainly disagree with that, and we think that the provisions of the code that govern this clearly provide a mechanism with which a minor defect like this could be cured. And I know this council regularly hears appeals on this issue and regularly finds that these appeals are rejected. And there are a lot of valid reasons to do so, and we understand that. And we don't dispute that the issue with respect to why this bid was rejected, the facts are correct. The company submitted a company check instead of a cashier's check for $50. And that was a mistake, and that's why it was rejected. But we think that, and the city attorney has taken the position that that cannot be cured. That defect over $50 makes the bid itself non-compliant. And we think that the statute, the code, which is Municipal Code 10, Section 110, gives us a clear path that you can follow that allows this bid to be, the bid security to be cured. And that substantially, that statute, Section 110, defines what is to happen if a bid is substantially non-compliant or the bid defect is found to be minor. If it's substantially non-compliant, it says the bid shall be rejected. And that's what they did in this case. They just immediately, within a day or two, sent it back. But if you look at the statute, Municipal Code 10110, it says minor defects include, and here's the key, but are not limited to a missing signature on a bond that has been submitted, or on the attorney-in-fact portion of the bond, or a power of attorney. And if you think about, and what does that mean? When you submit a bid, you're given the option, several options of what to submit for security. And one of the options is to submit a bond. And another option is cash, another option is a cashier's check. And so the statute says if the bid security has a defect that can be cured, it should be declared minor, and the bidder should be given the opportunity to cure it. And if you think about the interpretation that the city attorney's office is giving this, is that this, a bond could be cured, but a check cannot be. A bond, as I have just described it in the statute, that is not signed, that doesn't have a power of attorney with it, is not a legal, valid instrument. It's not worth anything. Here, Blue Cross Blue Shield submitted a check for $50, a valid legal instrument. City could have cashed it. Couldn't cash that bond that they say could be cured. And so the issue is that a curable defect? Is that a minor defect? And if you're going to equate one that isn't even worth any money, because it's not legal unless it's cured, the bond, as opposed to a check where the only issue is Blue Cross a valid, is it a credit risk is really what that is. And so I think that the city's interpretation of that portion of Section 110 is incorrect, with all due respect. I think that this is a minor defect. And I know that the city takes position bids have to be submitted in substantial conformance with what is required. But when you have built into the provisions of the municipal code a provision that allows cure of minor defects, I can't think of a more minor defect than this. It's not, and the city, you're going to hear the city say, this could open up the floodgates, and then anything can be cured. Well, no, that's not correct. Timely failures can't bring back time, can't cure that. But this is, it's not a failure of the bid itself, it's a bid security for $50. It was a valid legal obligation, and it certainly, I think, it was capable of being cured. When Blue Cross filed the appeal, they submitted a cashier's check for $50. And they effectively cured it, but of course we need our appeal to be approved in order for that to be valid. You have to allow us to do that. And that's not, Section 110 is not the end of it. The RFP that the city issued reserved the right of the city to waive any defect that was not material or did not give another bidder, or did not give the bidder a competitive advantage. Certainly, in this instance, the $50, allowing them to cure the defect with the $50 does not in any way give them a benefit, an advantage over another bidder, and is certainly the type of defect that occurs in these kind of contracts or these kind of proposals that are meant to be cured. And so I think that the city should reconsider its position and allow them to cure the defect. And because it's minor, and there's another important reason. I think it benefits the city employees, the citizens of Omaha, because the more bids, the better. And remember, Blue Cross has been doing a very good job providing the claims administration for the health and pharma claims for the whole city for 8 years. That's a lot of experience. That's a lot of work. And what has happened now is their bid isn't even considered. We're not asking that their bid be given. We just want it to be considered, be granted. We just want the bid to be considered. I think it benefits everybody in this room, as well as everybody who lives in the city of Omaha. Because the more competition, the more bids, I think the better the end product will be.
Would you like to reserve some time for
I
rebuttal?
would. I would.
All right, we'll now hear from Mr. Wiesen for the city. Then we'll give you a couple minutes of rebuttal, and then council members may have questions. So thank you for sticking close by. Mr. Wiesen.
Ryan Wiesen, Assistant City Attorney. Omaha Municipal Code Section 10-103 authorizes the type of bid security that is acceptable when submitting a bid or proposal valued at $20,000 or more. It lists certified checks, official bank checks, cashier's checks, United States currency, negotiable United States government bonds, and 2 different types of bid bonds. What's not listed are personal checks and company checks. The facts in this case are undisputed that Blue Cross Blue Shield submitted a company check and that was not the type of bid security that is authorized by Section 10-103. As a result, it was rejected, as has been required by the Omaha Municipal Code for decades. It's the same position that the law department has held for a minimum of 21 years, most likely longer than that. Blue Cross argues that this is the type of minor defect that the code contemplates that can be corrected within 7 business days. And they were correct in that the code itself lists specific things like missing signature on a bid bond by either the surety or the principal company, or a missing power of attorney. But in all those cases, the form of the bid security that was originally submitted was essentially correct and is contemplated by 10-103. The form of bid security that was attempted to be submitted in this case was a company check, and that was not contemplated by Section 10-103. The issue in this point is, in this case, is following the law as it's been enacted by the City Council and set forth. If we deviate from it, then where do we draw that line in the future? Is failure to submit an RC1 contractor form a correctable defect? Is misfilling out an SCV form a correctable defect at that point? If you submit bid security and you do a check and it's 50% of the total, in this case that would be $25, you have 7 days to correct it up to $50. If it's a multi-million-dollar CSO project and you submit 50% of what would essentially be a $500,000 bid security and you're $250,000 short, do you then need to have 7 days to correct that defect by submitting an additional check for $250,000? If we deviate from the requirements that are set forth in the city code and the law, then where do we draw that line? Who makes that decision? That is one of the reasons why the department recommends that the City Council uphold the law and deny the appeal in this case. Additionally, in the specifications itself, this requirement was clearly noted. On page 3 of the specifications, under the standard terms in the first paragraph, in capital letters, there's a sentence that says, letters of credit and company checks are not acceptable substitutes for a bid bond and would be cause for rejection of the bid. So not only was Omaha Municipal Code 10-103 not followed in this case, neither were the bid specifications where it was clearly set forth in the requirements. The city law department would respectfully request that the council uphold the rejection of the bid and deny the appeal in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Wiesen. Mr. Powers. You'll have a couple minutes.
Okay, thank you. First, with respect to Section 110 that the discussion just centered on, and the difference between the bond and a check, That was a distinction without a difference. What he said, well, these bonds aren't legal, they're not signed, but they're still, quote, a bond. Well, we submitted a check, it just wasn't a cashier's check. It was still a check. With respect to the argument that this opens the door, because someone might submit 25 instead of 50, that's not what happened here. We submitted it for $50. The mistake was it was not a cashier's check. And the same RFP that he showed you also says that the city reserves the right to waive any deviation or errors that are not material, do not invalidate the legitimacy of the proposal, and do not prove the vendor's competitive position. This certainly does none of that. And because they've interpreted it this way in the past, doesn't mean that's the way it has to be. And I think the reliance on 110 is important because what we're dealing with here is the section that deals with bond security, which is not part of the actual bid. We're talking about $50. And they clearly realized when they wrote this that there could be mistakes with how that bond security comes in. And the minor defects, and this is the part the city ignores, says includes but is not limited to the following. It doesn't say it can't, these are the only minor defects. Include but not limited to the following. And the city chooses to ignore that language. But that is in the code. And we think that this is the epitome of a minor defect. And it's not, again, it's not any of the examples that Ryan gave us dealt with two exact type of instruments. The right amount of money, the right check, or a check for the amount, a bond that's not signed, or a check. There's still instruments that fit the general idea behind the security. And we really do think that when you really weigh everything, you have to consider how important it is for everybody in Omaha when you have a health provider, a quality company like Blue Cross Blue Shield, who has been handling these claims the period they have, to at least have their bid considered by the bid selection committee, who will ultimately determine what is in the best interest and what bid fits it. And we think this is a minor defect. We think it's capable of being cured, and we wish you to allow us to cure it. And thank you.
Thank you. Well, the hearing's closed. Council members? Mr. Gray, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me ask, and I hate to pit two attorneys, I guess. Let me start with, tell me what the difference would be because the issue was raised about whether or not, Ryan, I'm asking you, I guess, what would be the difference in that and not, is there a substantial difference in your judgment that when you're talking about something like a form for SEB or one of the other forms that we require in any bid document for contractors, what would be the difference between having a form that is omitted versus having a check that is sent but is not a cashier's check?
Ryan Leeson, Assistant City Attorney. I think it depends on where the genesis of this particular requirement that you're talking about comes from. In this case, the genesis of the requirement for bid security comes from city ordinance, from city code, from a law that the city council has passed. If the genesis comes from just a section of the specifications that are included but not a requirement of code, then certainly the council has more flexibility in that point to exercise its discretion and to use its discretion to determine what is the lowest and best bid received in line with those specifications. But again, in this case, the genesis of the requirement comes from city code, from a law passed by a previous iteration of the city council. And as a result, that's why we have interpreted it the way we have and applied it the way we have.
Okay. Just a question for Blue Cross for a second. In the document, as our city attorney revealed in there, it specifically says a personal check is not acceptable. Isn't that what it said? The document that you had, Ryan, that says, if you could put that up for me a second, just so that, or if you have it too. but you had it highlighted.
Well, it's right.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Want to see that finger? What it
Company checks are not acceptable. That's in the document that was sent to you, correct? Isn't that?
Just Jim Powers for the record from
Yes.
Blue Cross. It says that the letters of credit and company checks are not acceptable substitute for bid bond and would be cause for rejection of the bid. Didn't say that it will be automatically rejected. They could decide to reject it. It said that. Clearly a mistake was made. People are working from home. It's COVID times. We're not saying that what we did was correct. What we're saying is this statute right here says minor defects include but are not limited to
yeah.
and again, right down here, it says the city reserves the right to waive any deviations or errors that are not material, do not invalidate the legitimacy of the proposal, and do not improve the vendor's competitive position. This fits that exactly. So, as Ryan said, the facts aren't in dispute. It's the city's interpretation. They've chosen to ignore, including but not limited to, and say those are the only exceptions. And keep in mind, the whole bid security and the whole minor defect is the form of security offered by the bidder sufficient to protect the city for $50. And if the mistake is made with that, there was a provision here to allow a cure. And we're saying that the mistake, or what we think was incorrect, was when the bid opening committee looked at this and said, that's a substantial non-compliance. By God, we're rejecting the whole thing. This statute, Section 110, is designed exactly if there's a minor defect in the bid security, and that can be easily cured, it should be. And I can't think of a more compelling and obvious example than what's before you today. And with what's at stake for the citizens and the city employees to have their claims handled, the way they've been handled for 8 years, that's over $200 million worth of claims. Because of a $50, someone decided, no, that's a check. It said right here, we got you. They ignore this. They ignore including but not limited to. And worried about some problem in the future, which really isn't the same. And they say it's okay to submit a bond that you can't cash because it's no good. It's not a valid legal instrument. We did submit a check and say somehow a bond fits it, but a check doesn't. You have check. There's different kinds of checks, but you know what they are? They're all negotiable instruments. We submitted a negotiable instrument. It wasn't the cashier's check, but the city could have exchanged it for funds. So the whole issue comes down to what was the risk to the city for that period of time, waiting for it to be cured? Minimal. It's not substantial. It's certainly not a substantial noncompliance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Vice President Palermo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And mine was more of a comment, quickly just now going back over the past agendas and looking at bid rejection appeals. And what I found was, time and time again, to each and every one of us, they were small, minor details that were painful for us to sit up here and many times and take the next bid who is quite a bit more. So if you want to talk about how we're going to save money for the city and doing more for the city, here, let me tell you again, if you haven't been paying attention for years, we need an electronic bidding system. Because here we are today again, and here's what I found looking back through these appeals from, if my memory serves me correct. One of them was a company check that was denied. Somebody we already had as a provider for the city of Omaha, denied because they put a company check in. SEB form that wasn't properly taken care of. One that was lost in the mailroom, postmarked before the bid deadline, but didn't get up to the opening, that was denied. We had some individual list prices for some itemized tree work, but because the trees weren't individually marked in there in case they didn't do them, so we could take it off, even though the bid was the lowest bid at the bottom when you did basic addition, denied. An RC1 that was left out last week for a small business in my community that affects my constituents, that I know the zip codes that they live in are my constituents, of a company that's did work for the city of Omaha for 50 or 60 years for simple hauling and grading that they could do blindfolded, denied. We can't change this. No, you're wrong. We can change it. We have to get an electronic bidding system, and we got to get it now. Otherwise, we're going to keep having this week after week. So I apologize to Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Great company, but I can't do it. How do I tell Mr. Fuccinero last week no and tell you yes today? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Melton, you're recognized.
Oh, thank you. And I have to say, I wish the lawyers for Blue Cross Blue Shield could be here month after month when we have people come down who have made what I would consider some very small mistakes. And we have to tell them they're small business owners. This is costing them a great deal of money. And we have to tell them no because they didn't do a form correctly. Now, I would say that an RC form is wholly different and completely separate than this bond check because you submitted the bond. You didn't eliminate the bond. The bond was submitted. And I guess my question would be, and Ryan, if you could answer, Mr. Wiesen, if you could answer this. I understand in 103, it does give the definitions and it says an official bank check. It doesn't define those anywhere in 10103. So the official bank check would mean a check from a bank, not a corporate check using a bank.
That is my understanding. We do see checks at the bid opening committee that do say official bank check on the top of them. I think it's a type of instrument or check that a bank can issue that's different than a certified check, but it does say official bank check at the top.
But would did the check that Blue Cross Blue Shield submitted, would that not be an official bank check?
No, that's a company check. These are checks that I think are still, as my understanding, are still issued by the bank itself, by the entity that is the bank, from guaranteed funds that the bank holds.
Okay. Because, I mean, that would be my question, would be I'm looking at, I guess I didn't know what the official definition of official bank check, because those aren't defined.
Again, it's my understanding that it's of the nature of a certified check or a cashier's check, and that they are funds drawn from the holdings of the bank itself that are guaranteed in some form or fashion, that it's different than from a personal check or a company check, in that there's no guarantee that those funds are going to be available when you go to cash that check. It's an additional certification that those funds are available for processing.
Okay, and what about the argument that under the bid bond exception under 10-110, where they specifically, our code actually specifically lists minor defects, which state and include but not limited to missing a signature on a bond. So in this case, the bond was actually submitted.
I would not say that. I would say that a company check was submitted. That is different than bid security, and it wasn't a bond necessarily. I mean, a bid bond. A bid bond is a certain form that is issued by a surety company. There are two types of bid bonds that are authorized by Section 103. With respect to the minor defects, the city doesn't just simply rely on the three things that are listed here. The city has also interpreted in the past that a minor defect can be a wrong formal entity name. A lot of times, rather than the city of Omaha being listed as the obligee, it'll list a department. We've always taken the position that departments don't have legal standing to assert claims to sue or be sued. Only the city of Omaha has the power to sue or be sued. So we've always taken the position that the obligee has to be listed as the city of Omaha on the bond, so that if we have to take action against the surety company, we can do that. The Parks Department can't go to court and say, I'm the Parks Department, I'm going to take action on the surety bond. So that would be a type of correctable error that may not be listed here, but is again the form is that was submitted is one contemplated by section 10-103. There's just an error in how that form has been presented or filled out. In previous iterations of the city council have determined through their lawmaking ability that that is the type of thing that can be corrected within 7 days.
And in our, under the standard conditions and terms, where it is all caps, which is letters of credit and company checks are not acceptable substitutes for a bid bond and would be cause for rejection of bid. That doesn't say shall. So does that give the city some leeway there because of using the word would instead of shall?
I think it does not say shall. It also does not say may. My interpretation would be that would is more affirmative than could or may. If there is a range and may's on one end and shall's on the other end, would is probably closer to shall than it is may. Could is probably closer to may than it would be shall. But again, if you look at just the plain language, I think would indicates that if X happens, then Y will follow. And that's what we have here. A company check was submitted, so the bid was rejected.
And then do you recall an appeal? Because I know Councilmember Palermo brought something up, and I don't recall it. But if it is the case, did you have on record or somewhere that we did deny an appeal because they used a company check for a bond previously?
The city clerk jogged my memory on one earlier today. It was within the past year or two. It's my understanding that it was a request for proposals for financial auditing services for the finance department. The city's current vendor submitted a company check, and it was denied. They appealed that, and at council, the law department advised that the rejection be upheld and the appeal be denied. The finance director, Mr. Curtis, if I recall correctly, got up and said, I understand what the law department is saying, but we really like these guys. We'd like them to be considered. And it's my understanding that the council voted to deny the appeal and uphold the rejection at that time.
Okay, I recall that appeal. I guess I didn't recall what it was for.
And I didn't specifically recall it this morning or last week, but the city clerk reminded me that that was the reason for the denial, was a company check.
Because in all honesty, I've looked at this and thought this could be a material or a minor defect. However, if we've in the past, and even within the past year, if we denied an appeal for this specific issue, I would be hard pressed to not follow precedent. As difficult as it may be, and as much as I like Blue Cross Blue Shield, if it was for those specific facts that we denied, and I remember the two accounting firms, and I also remember that we denied somebody that has done a great job for the city for
Councilmember
many
Melton.
years. So I just want to be clear that that was exactly
I think
it.
the clerk would confirm it was the failure to post any form of bond in that case.
That was my question. So
Not a check, not a bond.
And I was
not
mistaken
anything.
then.
There was no security for the bond.
okay, so my specific question was, did they submit a company check?
And it would seem from the clerk's response
No.
that they did not.
Okay, so we don't have this circumstance previously.
That sounds correct.
Okay, thank you.
With
because
that specific one.
To me, that makes
Yeah.
a big difference. I would say if there was no bond submitted at all, that's a material defect. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Vice President Palermo, your light came on. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Wiesing, let me ask you a question that I don't know. Are you part of the bid bond opening process?
I am. The bid opening committee consists of 3 members, the city clerk or the city clerk's designee, the purchasing agent or the purchasing agent's designee, and the city attorney or an assistant city attorney. For the past 7.5 years, I've been assigned by the law department to the bid opening committee.
Okay, so do you recall opening any bid within, say, the last 6 months where a company check was included with the bid and the bid was denied, even though it didn't make it to this appeal with inside the chamber?
Yes, I would say between 6 to 12 bids are rejected every year.
Sorry, tell me again how many?
I would say approximately 6 to 12 bids are rejected every year for either submitting a personal check or a company check.
Okay, so sometimes people don't have, thank you, Mr. Wiesing, and I would add Mr. President, sometimes people don't have the resources to get it to this process of the appeal. But we have now heard that people in bids have been rejected due to this same exact circumstance. And again, nothing against Blue Cross and Blue Shield, but I can guarantee there's a whole bunch of lawyers with one more number ready to push on their phone to call these people that we have denied. Keep that in mind, council members. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, the clerk did find the journal entry and the rejection. They're pulling up the date and the item, but it was, for the record, a failure to post any form of bid security bond at all. No check, no nothing. So, and we'll make that a part of the minutes so that the record is clear on that. Councilmember Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ryan, could you again put up the section that was highlighted? You had it highlighted. I know Mr. Powers had it, the same thing, but it wasn't highlighted. So I know you just, Councilmember Melton was asking about it saying, not saying may or shall, but you went through kind of a range of which side it may fall on off of center, but not all the way to one side or another. And I think you said would was a little closer to shall than may, but I think that still leaves room for interpretation, does it not?
Generally, terms like shall and may are considered terms of statutory construction. In the legal field, they have a specific meaning and are used in construing and writing contracts. Words that like could or would are more just plain ordinary English words that may not have necessarily the statutorily interpretation weight of case law behind them.
But would you say that there is room if you're using the word would? I think you said, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I think earlier you said, yeah, there is.
I would say that it doesn't fully extend to the term shall, but it's not fully discretionary either.
I know I've referred to a book that I keep on my desk that I've been thinking a lot about. It's called The Death of Common Sense. And I know what our statutes say and what the ordinances say. And it's when it is called out that company checks are not an acceptable substitute, but then you after that say would be cause for rejection of bid. I don't know, in my mind I'm open to the argument that maybe there is room for interpretation there. So talk me out of that.
I would say that the term would appears in the specifications and doesn't appear in section 10-103. Section 10-103 is a law enacted by the City Council, and it specifies the type of bid security that is required. Company checks are not contemplated or listed in section 103. Now, the council can revisit that law in the future and change it and either authorize personal or company checks to be acceptable forms of bid security or eliminate the requirement of bid security going forward for all bids or just specific bids. But as it stands right now, section 10-103 is a duly enacted law by the City Council, and it does not contemplate or permit company or personal checks as forms of bid security. And there's no would in that section that says that maybe there's some discretion there. It says that it has to be the type of bid security that I went through at the beginning of the presentation today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, the agenda item we've been referring to where there was no bid security at all submitted was agenda item 42 on October 22, 2019, City Council. Mr. Powers, why don't you come on down as we're waiting for some others who have lights on. As I see this, we have two things here, council members. 90% of the universe, or 95 or even 98% of the universe of the bid rejection appeals we get are in some form of defect in the bid itself, that which, if you grant that, gives competitive advantage to someone who didn't comply with the bid itself. Here, we're dealing with a bid in the area of bid security. There's two really different things here. This is the submission security for what, in fact, is the packet of the body to then compete and be whether it's lowest and best. Here, it's just, is this bid secure? You've got the included but not limited to language here. To me, there's a universe of difference between bid defects, and there's been any number of them cited here today, like the RC1 form, which is the responsible contractor form that gives minimum assurances to the fact that the contractor is a responsible contractor by not misclassifying employees, by making sure they don't have any major willful OSHA violations, that they pay their taxes, et cetera, et cetera. Here we're talking about a $50 security of a financial instrument to make sure this over here, in terms of the bid, is secured by this minimum negotiable instrument. And if this isn't a minor circumstance and defect in security, I don't know what is. And when you have this language that our committee has the basis to allow things to be cured for minor defects, I don't know why in the world the committee didn't take the cashier's check when they tried to cure. And I see that the $50 check of the company is a minor deal. But I'd like to think that common sense would prevail on that too. As lawyers, we look at mandatory language. As Mr. Powers, I'm sure you and General Counsel of Blue Cross and Blue Shield are very familiar with. When we in the law want to compel things and mandate them, we use words intentionally written and included to achieve that purpose. And shall is the word. That is and we do not have that here. And we have an ordinance which gives us the basis to grant this appeal with a minor defect. We're also a body of precedent. We respect precedent. In my 12 years, I cannot think of a bid security appeal for someone who has submitted a bid security and then been rejected and not being allowed to cure it. The one we had that's been cited today was no form of security. Again, a universe of difference. So that's my take. Councilmember Festerson, you're recognized.
Well, I think we're in a pretty unenviable position here with this issue facing us in terms of some pretty high stakes. And for most city employees, the administrator of their health benefits. And, you know, when we talk about the difference between a cashier's check and a company check and $50 based on what is probably about a $40 million situation per year in claims, it does seem a bit absurd, and you are tempted to go with your common sense to allow more bidders to prevail and to be considered. But I am concerned about that precedent and what we're hearing from the law department and how that may have impacted other smaller companies in their bid process that didn't come to this juncture. So I'm not sure where this will end up today, but I will say this. I totally agree with Councilmember Palermo's comments about the electronic bidding process. We can't keep having issues like this coming to the City Council that shouldn't occur in the first place and seem to be resolvable in our bidding process for large and small companies. But then secondly, to the extent the company check versus the cashier check appears in our code at this point, seems outdated and needs to get addressed, and that's something I would be willing to look at going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Powers, did you have something to say before we move on to Councilmember Melton?
Yes. Back to, I didn't get a comment on the whole shall versus would. I think that is a major difference. And I think the city knows it. If they wanted to say shall, it would have said shall. Look at the statute. What does it say? If the bid opening committee determines that a bid bond is substantially non-compliant on its face, the city clerk shall send a letter. Same thing if it's a minor defect, shall. Any lawyer knows when it says shall, that means you've boxed it in. You say would be grounds, that means let's talk about it. Everything, there's a chance, you got to look at the circumstances. And no one's talking about the ability of this council to waive a defect that's minor. The city put that in there. And whether it was done before or not done, I'm sure it's been done. I know it's been done before. There can be exceptions. And Council Palermo, I understand that there's been other people, although the one that was cited turned out not to be applicable. But if the city is not interpreting this statute and ignoring the including but not limited to, if you don't change it, when are you going to? And if it means that there's more work for the bid committee, it has to be addressed, but it shouldn't impact Blue Cross in the existing. We've read it. We think this is a minor defect, and we're here today because we think it fits exactly what they're talking about. And to say, Mr. Ryan said, well, one is a bond. It's all under the bid bond statute, 103. And to say that a check, because it's not a cashier's check, doesn't fit that, but a bond that isn't signed or it doesn't contain a power of attorney isn't a bond. It's a piece of paper that's worthless. So they've obviously agreed that certain minor defects can be cured. And I don't know if anyone's sat up here and made this argument before to the council on this particular issue, but I think if there's precedent that needs to be addressed, that's what lawyers do. The law would be the same if it had never been changed. Think of how many things were done wrong on precedent over time. It's nothing like that here, but we are presenting, I think, a compelling presentation and argument why this is a minor defect and why it benefits so many people, and most importantly, the employees of the city of Omaha and the citizens, because this costs. We think it can be cured. It has been cured if would be accepted. So
thank you.
I do. I brought 10 of them.
Yeah, if you could hand it to the clerk, then we'll move on to Councilmember Melton.
Oh, thank you. And I wanted to actually kind of follow up on that. The only case this council's heard on appeal would have been the one back in October 22nd of 19, and that would be no bid at all. No bid was submitted at all. So that is wholly different. And I think what I'm saying today is I agree that I think section 10-110 is applicable here. I think submitting a corporate check versus a cashier's check is something that is curable based upon a city code, based upon our law. So I guess what I'm saying in the future, that's what you should be doing, and that's what this appeal is based on, is that we are setting precedents that future bids that come in with a corporate check versus a cashier's check, I think is something that could be curable under our current law. I guess that's what I believe, that is a curable event and that it is minor. So I think to just look at 103, section 10-103, but ignore 10-110 would be somewhat irresponsible. And I guess that's what we're doing today, is we're saying that's what this council would like to do. And again, until we get this electronic system, which then will most likely accept credit cards. So, because that's how you're gonna have to pay for something. I guess if you don't bring it down, which would be no different than a corporate check. So I guess I'm looking at everything, and I think it's section 10-110 that I find very compelling. And I wish maybe some of those other, if you have denied people and they failed to appeal before, hopefully we're sending this out, that in the future, maybe people should try and appeal it. And we have bidders come down here and appeal things without a lawyer all the time. So I guess that's what I'm basing my opinion on today.
Thank you. Vice President Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I find us getting into the same shall, should, will, would. We've been here before. It was with Spencer Management. It was with the preservation bond work, I believe, for streets. I'm not going to call anybody down because nobody's going to remember, but I remember. I'm sure my colleagues remember. And we sat here and discussed all these different meanings of how you wanted to interpret this on the fact that their bid was not complete. Again, a company that does work with the city. And it was denied. They showed up, they appealed it, it was denied. And you're right, the only appeal we've had in this exact same circumstance was with a check that wasn't submitted, but you've heard Mr. Wiesing say in the bond opening committee that we've had 6 to 12 over the past 12 years, exactly the same, that they did not accept a company check. Mr. Wiesing, do you want to get up on the record and say yes or no to that? Please.
Brian Wiesen, Assistant City Attorney. I had estimated that approximately 6 to 12 per year, not 6 to 12 over a 12-year period, would have been rejected.
Okay. Would I say 12 years?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Well, 1 year's even better. How about that? Thank you. So again, we are not on the council to determine what shall, should, will, would be. We had a bid, and although it was minor, it wasn't accepted. And again, I'm so adamant. That's right, Mr. Powers, with all due respect, it wasn't accepted. Because I sit here week after week. I didn't call you up. I can sit here week after week, and I have small businesses in my district that don't get bids. So why are you any different? Council members, think what you're setting yourself up for on this, no matter how minor, how little it is. We have denied these in the past for little things as well. An RC form is little when the company already does $1 million worth of work for the city. Not putting everything itemized is little when they already do work for the city. Mr. Wiesing will tell you, the first year on the council, especially Board of Eke, I voted against every one of these because I just thought, man, that can't be right. No, it is right. There's a reason why we don't accept these. I'm not putting myself out in front of this. If others think that this is right and you want to vote for it, by all means do. But those small businesses in my district, they'll know that I'm still pissed that they didn't get their bid. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brennan, you are recognized.
Mr. Powers, I have a couple questions for you. If you wouldn't mind coming back.
For the record, Jim Powers.
I guess my first question is, so can you just confirm that the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Nebraska, what you do is you work in insurance claims and you process the claims. That is the purpose of...
Yes.
Okay. What is going to happen to the workers of the city of Omaha if you are no longer... What would be the result of that?
Well, this is part of the bid process for the for the new contract.
Correct.
And we think the city workers would be disadvantaged by not having the existing claims administrator, at least in the mix, to determine if their bid is going to continue. But also, I assume the city would pick another contractor.
Sure.
But I think there's a value in the 8 years of experience.
Right. That's really all I have. I mean, I work in the insurance industry. I know how it works. I know how processing claims, how challenging it is, and to find a good company to represent the city of Omaha would be a real challenge. So that's all I have.
Thank you. And thank you, council members, for the vigorous and robust discussion. A motion is needed to either allow the appeal or deny the appeal. Councilmember Gray, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to, I'm first of all, I second your motion, Mr. Palermo. I just think that in this particular instance, I think there's two sides here that we're trying to address. And I think for, at least for me, I intend to stick with precedent. And because I understand also that I don't know how many times Blue Cross Blue Shield bids, but most of the time I think you get it right? Okay, and in this particular instance, it didn't happen the way it should have happened, the way you normally bid, correct? Okay, so, you know, knowing that, you know, Blue Cross bids a number of these contracts and normally does it right, and in this particular instance, there were questions about it. I have to side, I think, with Mr. Palermo in that, Councilmember Palermo in that, once I'm concerned about a precedent, and I recognize that the law that doesn't allow personal checks probably ought to be changed. But I don't think we approve something now and then go back and change that ordinance later. I think we do what I would consider to be appropriate in this instance and deny the appeal this time and make sure that we are addressing, that the next council is addressing that language post haste and allowing a personal check. But for me, I think for me, I'm going to side down the side of precedence. So I second your motion, Mr. Palermo, Councilmember Palermo. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Thank you, Councilmember Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think listening to President Jerram a few minutes ago, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, please stop me, sir. But I think we have here a situation where maybe we don't have precedent. I mean, this is on the bond security side of it rather than the actual bid. And then actually to Mr. Power's point too, that, and look, I respect the precedent and respectful of the process that we have always followed, and I think we're well grounded legally in that. But I think in this case, I think there is a difference, and that it is, even if I don't think that there is precedent for exactly this situation. Now, there may be other cases where they haven't gotten to us to that point, but if they had, then I think precedent may have been established for this situation. But I'm not sure, I have not been convinced that there is precedent for this situation.
Thank you, Councilmember Harding. I agree with that. And again, we're on the bid security side. And you know, someone once said to me in a courtroom about an argument, it was a lawyer and a co-defendant. Had different parties that had been sued in a case. And the judge asked a question, and the lawyer said, well, I'll give you 2.5 million reasons why, you know, you ought to consider this argument. And that was how much the opposing side was asking for damages. And the point I'm trying to make is this. No matter what happens today, I hope, I expect that two things will happen. I think that the council should really strongly considering imposing a timeline to this city moving to the electronic bidding process. It's going to cure these issues. But second, along the lines of what has been said, in the near term, this ordinance should be fixed, as Mr. Powers suggests, because whether it's the courts or this body makes decisions and to resolve ambiguities or clear up the ordinances, we have that ability to do it with three readings and a vote. So that needs to be done. But here, when you're talking about bid security, not the bid documents, $50 that was immediately cured, and the committee just routinely rejecting, and they happen to be the first one in my 12 years that I can think of that actually appealed on this basis. is a very distinguishable difference between rejections for not complying with the bid itself. And that's as I see it. Councilmember Vice President Palermo, you're recognized.
Mr. President. Mr. Weising, please. I know I'm wearing you out today. For this particular bid, can you tell me how many people submitted bids? How many companies submitted bids?
Ryan Weisen, Assistant City Attorney. It was a two-part bid process. You could bid for third-party contract administrative services or the pharmacy benefits, or you could bid for both. It's my understanding that there were 4 bidders, I believe, for the combined services, third-party administrator and pharmacy benefits. Of those 4, 2 were rejected for submitting company checks, and 2 passed that initial hurdle. And then I believe there were additional 3 that submitted bids just for the pharmacy benefit services.
Okay, tell me again, Mr. Weising, how many people were denied because of company checks being submitted on this bid?
2.
2. 2 out of the 4.
Correct.
Okay.
Or 2 out of the 7, depending on how you look at it.
So we're in unprecedented times. So thank you. I just wanted to make a comment too. Council Member Brennan made me realize that I'm not here against Blue Cross and Blue Shield. It's about the process. It's about the companies that have been affected. But also, keep in mind, for those that are listening, regardless of how this goes, our city employees will not go without benefits. It will just be another provider, a provider who supplied the appropriate bid. So I want to make that clear, because sometimes that gets misconstrued on, oh, Vinny voted against the sweepers and he don't want his neighborhood to be cleaned up. No, it's not true. We got 2 other bidders because 2 were denied because a company check was in the bid packet at the bid opening, and both were denied. So we still have 2 providers that will provide these necessary resources to our city employees to make sure they're taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to deny. Roll call.
Palermo. Yes. Brennan. No. Festerson. Yes. Gray. Yes. Harding. No. Melton. No. Mr. President.
No.
Motion failed 3-4.
Is there an alternative motion? There's a motion to allow in a second. Roll call.
Palermo. No. Brennan. Yes. Festerson. No. Gray. No. Harding. Yes. Melton. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-3.
Your appeal's been granted, which means it'll be allowed to be considered along with the other bidders. Madam Clerk.
Thanks. Item 76, Medica appeals rejection of their bid from May 12th, 2021 for RFP City of Omaha Medical Administrative Services Organization, third-party administrator, pharmacy benefit manager services.
We have the appeal by Medica, correct?
Medica, yes, sir.
Mr. Bourne, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name, address, your affiliation, and the basis for your appeal.
My name is Pat Bourne. My home address is 13020 Binney Street here in Omaha. Medica's office address is 331 Village Point here in Omaha. Again, my name is Pat Bourne. I'm the market leader at Medica. This agenda item is the same as agenda item 53 that you just heard. I won't repeat the legal arguments that Blue Cross and Blue Shield made, but I'd like to bring a few additional items to your consideration.
Do you wish those incorporated into your argument?
The legal arguments are sound. I believe what Blue Cross and Blue Shield argued legally is what I'd like to, I don't want to, hear it 5 after 4. I don't want to repeat.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, sir. So the RFP, in addition to the city ordinance, give you broad discretion with certain limitations relative to waiving insignificant deviations in the bid and allowing such bidders back into the process simply for consideration, not to win the bid, but just simply for consideration. This bid protest, I believe, meets the very definition of when you should use that discretion. As a former state senator, I can relate to being reluctant to use that discretion, as it could potentially require you to review each and every bid challenge, essentially opening the door to future protests, no matter how significant or insignificant financially to the city. However, I think this is a very different situation regarding an extremely complicated and costly RFP. Frankly, the RFP was clear in terms of the requirements of the $50. It was. As a manager of people and a coach, I try to discover the whys behind an issue when something does not go as planned and treat situations such as this as learning opportunities for my team. The COVID pandemic has relaxed many administrative procedures. Bank lobbies have closed. Previously well-established business processes have changed dramatically due to work from home and other factors. All that I can conclude is that our normal processes at Medica and our checks and balances were not followed here. 4 bidders submitted bids to the city for providing the complete health administrative benefits. 2 of the bidders are for-profit insurance companies. Both Blue Cross Blue Shield and Medica are mutual not-for-profit organizations. And while I cannot speak for Blue Cross and Blue Shield, I can tell you that Medica prices to a less than 1% profit margin. That 1% is put into reserve to pay claims. We do not pay dividends. We're not beholden to shareholders. And we exist simply to take care of our members, the employees of City of Omaha, if we're so fortunate to land this contract, and make certain that their claims are paid when needed. I'm not criticizing any organization's business model, but I am suggesting that the not-for-profit model with very small margins provides more cost-effective benefit administration than for-profit entities with higher margins. A little about Medica. Medica has been in existence since 1974. We operate in 9 states, including the state of Nebraska. We serve 1 million members and generate around $5 billion in annual revenue. We have never had a company check that did not cash. We currently provide health insurance coverage to over 100,000 Nebraskans, and we are growing rapidly. Medica has developed a product that we offer in most of our markets that delivers an average of 20% reduction in actual claim spend without member disruption. That product was part of our proposal to the city. In our experience, not all the employees of a particular employee group select that product, so I'm not suggesting that you would save 20% on the $40 million spend. But I am suggesting that a 20% reduction on a $40,000 hip replacement or a 20% reduction on the cost of a $100,000 heart procedure is a savings in claim spend that's very significant and should be considered. As a former policymaker, I certainly understand the reluctance of letting a bidder correct an error in their bid filing. I do feel that the mistake of submitting a bank check instead of a certified check for $50 when the city could be potentially leaving several millions of dollars in savings behind meets the very definition of when you should use that discretion for your RFP. So I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your consideration. And again, our issue is the exact same as agenda item number 53.
Thank you. Mr. Wiesen, did you wish to present or incorporate your arguments herein by reference that you made on item number 53?
Brian Wiesen, Assistant City Attorney. I'd just like to incorporate the same arguments that I made on the previous item.
Without objection.
On this one.
So ordered. Councilmember Harding, you're recognized.
President. So I'm hoping this is kind of the same thing, but I want to make sure that that they are, in fact. So Senator Bourne, I had a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
So Medica received notification of the rejection of the bid based upon it was a $50 check, right?
Correct.
And you cured that with a cashier's check, correct?
Correct, within the time frame allowed.
Okay, that's kind of my question. Please tell me about the time frame.
I think we received the rejection on the 13th or 14th of May. I want to say we filed our letter with the certified check attached on the 19th or the 20th. And then we received notice, it was last Friday, we received notice from the clerk that we were within the time frame and could appear before you on Tuesday and make our argument.
Okay, and I'll ask, thank you. I'll ask the clerk because from the information I'm looking at, I'm seeing a letter from Medica dated the 21st 2021, which was hand-delivered, which acknowledges the receipt of the notification that the bid was not read due to the submission of improper bid security, and that included with that hand-delivered document was a $50 cashier's check to cure. So I guess my question is, I hope I'm wrong on this. My question is, if the bid was rejected on the 13th, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get back to this letter. If the bid if the letter from the city clerk was issued on May 13th, 2021, and you have 7 days to cure, would the cure date then be the 20th, Madam Clerk?
They're trying to ascertain the date the submission was made with the check and the date that the city clerk received the cashier's check. The original submission was a company check?
Correct.
And then what date, Mr. Harding would like to know, did your letter go out, and then did they send the cashier's check?
Bid opening was on May 12th. The letter was sent on May 13th. We received the check via email on May 21st.
He actually delivered it.
Hand-delivered.
Delivered, hand-delivered.
So you had the check submitted, company check, and then cashier's check submitted by hand delivery on the 21st. But the committee, that was their voluntary choice. They're saying that the committee had already said no to the company check.
Got it. Okay, so thank you for pointing that out, because it's then that cure period, if you will, is not in effect, or I'll say enforceable is probably the wrong word, because they weren't given notice that it was in default such that they could cure. So that 7-day period doesn't apply in this case. Would that be, Madam Court? Well,
they appealed on
okay.
time.
Okay.
The committee rejected their bid for posting a company check. They were not given an opportunity to cure.
Right.
They attempted to cure by posting the
Okay,
cashier's
so
check.
now I
hand
see
delivered.
Mr. Wiesen is at the podium and maybe wanting to make a comment on this.
Ryan Wiesen, Assistant City Attorney. Since the bid was outright rejected, there is no cure period.
Right, okay,
They have-
I wanted to make sure that was on the record, that even though, if someone were to look at the dates and say they didn't do it within 7 days, again, the cure period did not exist for them to comply by, so I wanted to make sure that was on the record such.
Correct. The applicable period in this case is the 10-day appeal notice filing requirement.
Which they appeal, and they made the appeal in time. Okay, so
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there a motion to grant or deny?
Motion to grant.
Roll call.
Palermo. It's already started. Roll call.
Voting has already started. Sorry.
We're just picking and choosing people we want now. No.
Brennan. Festerson. Gray. Harding.
Yes.
Melton. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-3.
Your appeal's been granted. Your bid will be considered by the city's HR department and consultants at Silverstone Hub.
Non-action items, items 54 through 74, do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on the agenda for consideration.
Roll call.
Palermo. Yes. Brennan. Yes. Festerson. Yes. Gray.
Yes.
Harding. Yes. Melton.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes, and someone did ask me to say the Bugs Bunny farewell, so that's all, folks.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 4:14.